the endless, sun-scorched deserts of Arabia, there once lived a tribe whose name has been all but lost to the winds of time. They were a society built around a deep, life-giving well, a community that appeared peaceful on the surface but was rotting from within. And from among them, a lone voice cried out, a single man who shouted the truth. But they chose to silence that voice. They cast their own prophet into the dark, cold well and laughed, their mockery echoing into the empty sky. This was a challenge hurled against Allah himself, and their end would be terrible indeed. In this story, we will witness the rise and the catastrophic fall of the people of Rass, a nation lost in the shadows of idol worship. We will see the solitary struggle of a prophet left utterly alone, his tragic demise, and the furious, inescapable punishment that descended from Allah. We journey now into the deep past, to a time somewhere between Basra and Yamama, in the heartland of Arabia. The climate is a furnace, the air thick with heat. Here, the only thing that can grant life is water, but there is no river, no shimmering lake, only a giant well, known in Arabic as Rass. It alone provides all the water for the people, and it is here that the tribe of Rass settled, their very existence a gift from Allah. It was another blistering summer day. The sun hung high in the sky like a merciless eye, and the ground was a searing griddle. It had not rained for months, and the once green valleys of Rass had withered into a dry, cracked desert. In the center of the village, the people were preparing for a solemn ceremony, their last, desperate hope. In the middle of the square stood a host of idols, placed side by side, and that morning they were draped with shiny cloth, like silent, lifeless kings. Today, the people would shower these idols with gifts, begging them for rain. Rings of fire encircled the square. The air throbbed with the loud, rhythmic beat of leather drums. Sheep and goats, huddled under a lone tree, awaited their turn to be sacrificed. The tribe leaders, their faces grim, were planning the final, crucial part of the ceremony. They desperately needed water. The well, their lifeline, was drying up. During those days, there was a prophet who spoke out against their idolatry, a lonely man who warned them whenever he could. Some say his name was Hanzala bin Safwan. Others believe he was the prophet Shu'aib or Ilyas. He was sent by the one true creator to the people of Rass, to remind them of the truth they had long forgotten. He spoke of the owner of the heavens and the earth, the one who gives life and takes it away. He pleaded with them not to worship false gods, not to bow to trees or silent, carved statues. But they did not take him seriously. They scoffed at his words, twisting them into jokes. They called him a magician, a purveyor of dark arts. They accused him of bringing bad luck, claiming the rain had ceased because of him, that he was the sole reason for the devastating drought. They insisted that his prayers had caused their sacred trees to wither and die. After he had prayed, all 12 of the trees they worshipped had perished. And now, they believed there was only one way to fix it, one way to please the god of the tree. They had to kill him. The ones who despised him most were the tribal leaders. Night after night, they held secret meetings, their whispers like snakes in the dark, as they planned how to silence him for good. "This man is poisoning our people," they hissed. "He is destroying the religion of our ancestors, and the rain does not fall because of him." They devised a plan. They would invite him to the sacred well. They sent him a message. "We want to talk with you." The prophet, his heart filled with a fragile hope for peace, came. The sacred well was in the center of the city, once a place of blessed, flowing water. It had been dry for months, filled with large stones and turned into a desolate mound. The tribe leaders greeted him with smiles that did not reach their eyes, their faces masks of false sincerity. "Welcome, prophet," one of them said, "We want to make peace with you." As the prophet walked closer, he understood their true intentions, the malice lurking behind their hollow words. But he did not run. "My brothers," he said softly, his voice a gentle plea, "I see nothing in your hearts but hate." "Silence," they shouted. A signal was given, and 5 men lunged. Grabbing him, they stuffed cloth into his mouth, silencing his voice, and bound him tightly with rough ropes. His hands were tied behind his back, his feet shackled together. He could no longer speak, no longer move. They dragged him to the edge of the well. It was a high drop. If he fell, his bones would surely shatter. What was happening to the prophet took place at the very well where he used to call the people to truth. Yet no one uttered a single word in his defense. The prophet turned to them and raised his voice, a final, desperate cry so the whole tribe could hear. There was no anger in his tone, no curses, only a profound, heart-wrenching sorrow. "Oh, my people, why are you rushing toward your own destruction? I only tell you the truth. Have you forgotten the one who created the tree, the one who sends the clouds, the one who gave you life before you even knew how to breathe? Perhaps a few hearts were touched by his words, a flicker of doubt in the darkness. But the leaders of the tribe only mocked him. Let this be your final sermon." And with a final, brutal shove, they pushed him down. The prophet fell among the sharp stones. His ribs cracked, his arm broke, his face was wounded and bleeding, but he was still alive, trapped and helpless between the rocks, consumed by agonizing pain. One of the tribe's leaders laughed, a cruel, ugly sound. "Let the wolves and eagles take care of you now." The inside of the well was deep and cold. The place that had once given them life for years had now become the tomb where they tried to silence the message of truth. It was dark, damp, and airless. He could neither sit nor stand. They were burying him alive. They sealed the top with large, heavy stones. Unable to bear the sound of his suffering, so they silenced it completely. Days passed. The prophet lay there, bleeding, dying a slow, agonizing death from thirst. Only his heart continued to pray. "My Lord, you see me? I delivered your message. I am pleased with you, but I am not pleased with them," he whispered. On the 5th day, he took his final, shuddering breath. As his soul departed from his broken body, a brilliant light shone from between the stones. At that very moment, in the distant village where the people were celebrating, they did not notice that the earth had begun to tremble. Drums were pounding in the square. Animals were being sacrificed, and the priests were shouting, "The gods are happy, blessings will return." But the sky was turning a menacing dark. The first clouds were forming, black, heavy, and filled with a terrible anger. The people of Ar-Rass had no idea of the cataclysmic destruction that was about to be unleashed upon them. When the first clap of thunder echoed between the frantic sounds of the drums, no one realized it was a warning. But the blood of the prophet had already soaked into the soil, and the heavens were watching. So what had happened that led them to this dreadful point years ago? The people of Ar-Rass had lived in wide, fertile valleys and rich, prosperous lands, enjoying a life brimming with blessings. In the beginning, they had believed in Allah and worshipped Him alone. Islamic historians like Tabari and Ibn Kathir described the people of Ar-Rass as exceedingly wealthy. They were skilled farmers, living in abundance thanks to intricate irrigation channels and deep wells. Much like the people of Saba, they possessed vast, magnificent gardens, sprawling vineyards, and large, golden fields. Their lands overflowed with bountiful crops, and their fruit trees reached toward the sky. To visitors from afar, their region looked like a veritable paradise. But over time, instead of showing gratitude, they grew wild and arrogant, just like the people of Thamud and Ad before them. They turned their backs on the one true God and embraced the worship of idols. Some sources even say they became like the people of Lut, sinking into the same immoral and depraved acts. Wealth without thankfulness always, inevitably, leads to destruction. In the beginning, it all started with a simple appreciation. The people loved a magnificent tree that grew in the center of their city. It was an ancient pine, different from all the others. Some whispered that it had been planted by a descendant of the prophet Nuh. Others believed it was the very first tree to grow after the Great Flood. Whatever the true story, that tree was no longer just a tree. It had become a holy symbol. And when symbols are misunderstood, they transform into idols. Slowly, admiration curdled into worship. They gave the tree a name. They hung brightly colored cloths on its branches and poured offerings of milk at its roots. They began to believe that every blessing they possessed came from that sacred tree. Self-proclaimed religious leaders emerged, inventing elaborate, false ceremonies. When the original tree grew old, its seeds were sent to 12 surrounding villages, and each new sapling was revered as a sacred piece of the main tree. This is how a false, poisonous belief was born. No one was allowed to touch even a single leaf. Children were forbidden from climbing the trees. Sacrifices were made at the base of their trunks. The nearby spring water was no longer given to animals or the poor. Only the religious leaders could touch it. They called this water the essence of the gods. Those who disobeyed were severely punished. Some who dared to drink the water were even executed. But that water had once been a gift from Allah, free for everyone. As the years passed, the celebrations became larger and more terrifying. Each month, a different village would hold a sacred feast in honor of its tree. But once a year, all 12 villages would gather around the main tree for a massive, frenzied ritual. Fires were lit beneath the tree, sacrifices were made. And when the smoke grew thick and heavy, a voice would rise from within the tree, a deep, chilling voice. But it was not the tree. It was only the sound of the wind, just like the golden calf during the time of Musa, which made a sound. But the sound was not real. Most of the people believed, their minds clouded by superstition. But there were still some who harbored doubts. Some whispered that the tree remained silent when there was no wind. Others remembered that prayers should be raised to the sky, not to pieces of wood. But anyone who questioned was swiftly silenced. The priests controlled everything. They were no longer spiritual leaders. They had become tyrants. They knew very well that the tree held no power. But as long as the people believed, the power remained firmly in their hands. Then came the day when everything would begin to unravel. Allah sent a prophet, someone who did not believe in the tree and was chosen to guide even those who still did. He was a lonely man, humble and kind, with love shining in his eyes and truth on his tongue. He said, "Do not worship the trees. Worship the one who created them." And at that moment, the lie that had endured for centuries began to tremble. Truth had returned to Rass. And now, neither the trees nor the idols were safe. In this land of rampant idol worship, this man had no army, no throne, no riches, only the unshakable truth of his message and the sacred duty to deliver it. It is said that this messenger, sent to the people of Rass, was Hanzala bin Safwan. He was no stranger to pain. When Allah commanded him to preach, he did not hesitate, even though he knew this nation had strayed far from the path of truth for a very long time. He traveled from village to village, wearing simple clothes. He spoke not with pride, but with a deep, heartfelt love. At first, they laughed at him. "Are you insulting our gods?" they sneered. "Can you not see how our trees feed us? Our waters flow with their blessings. Are you mad? Or has a jinn possessed you?" But he did not give up. He stood beneath the very trees that the people worshipped, raised his hands to the sky, and prayed, "O Allah, guide these people. They were lied to. They do not know what they are doing." He called them back to the one true Creator, the one who created the heavens and the earth, the trees, the water, and the ground beneath their feet. He reminded them that a day would come when every soul would be held accountable. And on that day, no tree, no stone, and no ceremony would be able to save them. At first, some people began to listen in secret, mostly the poor, the weak, and the youth started to believe in him. But the priests were watching. They knew this man was a grave threat to their power, so they concocted a plan. They began to spread lies, branding him a sorcerer, claiming he had come to curse their trees, to dry up their fountains, and to ruin their sacred festivals. But even with all the slander, he did not step back. Then, the day of the great confrontation arrived, and it would change the destiny of the people of Rass forever. Before we arrive at that momentous day, let's briefly get to know the people of Rass from a historical perspective. The people of Rass valued art and architecture, but most of their art served their idol-worshipping beliefs. They believed trees and stones were sacred, so they built huge temples and imposing altars. Some historians believe they might have had a building culture similar to that of the people of Thamud, a nation known for carving magnificent homes into solid rock. Likewise, the people of Rass likely built sturdy stone houses around their precious water wells. It is also said that they created idols with their own hands and offered sacrifices to them. The greatest challenge faced by the prophet sent to them was fighting against this deeply entrenched idolatry. But the people of Rass clung tightly to the beliefs of their ancestors and vehemently rejected the prophet's warnings. In the beginning, they had a strong and organized society, but over time, they devolved into a people who ignored justice and fairness. The rich grew richer, while the poor were denied even the most basic resources. They forgot the true source of their blessings, Allah, and became one of the nations that crossed all limits in their arrogance. Those in power tightened their grip over the people, and justice was twisted to serve their selfish interests. Even though Allah sent them a prophet, they threatened him, mocked him, and made life exceedingly difficult for the few who dared to believe in him. This corrupt system showed no gratitude during times of abundance, and the prophet's warnings failed to soften their hardened hearts. Their wealth only made them more arrogant. They began to think they owned everything. At this point, a familiar tragic cycle began, a cycle seen in many destroyed nations: abundance, arrogance, corruption, oppression, warning, rebellion, and finally, destruction. And then the day arrived. The prophet walked to the center of the city, where they worshipped the tree. While everyone else was bowing down, he stood in front of the sacred tree, the very same ancient tree that generations had cried around and prayed to. It looked old and grand, a silent witness to their folly. With a voice that echoed across the valley, he called out, "O my Lord, this tree is false. These people have turned it into a god. Besides you, let it wither. Show them your power." Fear. Silence. The priests laughed at him, but the people were worried. And the next morning, the tree was dead. Its leaves had turned a sickly black, its trunk was split, and its roots had rotted from the inside out. By noon, the other 11 trees also began to die. Fear spread like wildfire. Was this a curse? Was it magic? Or worse, what if he was telling the truth? Months passed. The people of Rass tried to live as if nothing had happened, but things were no longer the same. In the first month, the crops failed. The wheat heads were half empty. The barley was small and bitter. "It is just a bad season," the priests declared. "Next year will be better." In the second month, the fruit trees lost their leaves. Apple and pear trees began to dry up before their time. Grapevines turned dark, the grapes rotting before they could ripen. "This is only temporary," they insisted. "The spirits of the trees are resting." In the third month, the vegetable gardens died. Onions rotted in the soil, carrots dried up before growing. Women had nothing to bring to the market. People began going to bed hungry. Then came the fourth month, and the animals began to die. Sheep got sick for no reason. Their milk stopped flowing, and their wool started falling out. The cows gave bitter, undrinkable milk. The chickens stopped laying eggs. Even the dogs struggled to find food. The people ran to the priests. "What should we do?" they begged. The priests demanded more sacrifices, more animals, more rituals, more smoke. But nothing changed. Some began to whisper, "What if that man was right?" But most still refused to believe. They said this was the curse of the prophet. But the truth was something else entirely. This was Allah's merciful warning. They still had a chance to repent and return, but their pride would not let them. By the 5th month, even the fountains began to dry up. That once holy Zee water now flowed muddy. Some fountains stopped completely. People had to travel far just to get a sip of water. By the 6th month, no one could deny it anymore. This was not just bad luck. This was a punishment. This was a test. A crowd larger than the valley had seen in years had gathered. All 12 villages were there. The same people who once came to celebrate the sacred festivals of life. But this time, the mood was darker, more hopeless. The trees were dying, the fountains had dried up, and the sky had been a grim, dark canvas for days. It was as if the air itself was holding its breath. The priests stood on their platforms, their faces covered in ashes, their voices weak and cracking. They no longer feared their false gods. They feared losing their power. A silence before the storm. They had prayed again, but the drought still had not ended. That night, the high priest and tribal leaders held a secret meeting. Other elders joined them in the temple, hidden in the suffocating darkness, their faces looking grim by the flickering candlelight. "Things are getting out of control," said one of the leaders in a harsh, guttural voice. "The people are starting to doubt us. Every day, someone remembers that prophet's words. If we do not act quickly, we will lose all control." They all agreed. "If we make him disappear and throw him into a well, this will all end." The plan was clear: invite the prophet to the city center, then take him to the well and throw him in. "Prepare the well ahead of time," said one of them with a cold, cruel smile. "Fill it with stones. This time, no chances." The next day, the men invited the prophet to the city center. He felt a prickle of suspicion, but accepted the invitation and set out on his way. When he arrived, a few tribal leaders greeted him with their fake, painted smiles. "Welcome," they said. "We want to make peace. The people want to hear from you. Come, speak in front of this well. Maybe we can come to an agreement." The messenger sensed their true, malevolent intentions, but he did not run. "Oh, my brothers," he said gently, "I see nothing in your hearts but hate. But I do not hate you. If the people truly want to listen, then I will come." The leaders exchanged satisfied, triumphant looks. The plan was working. The central well had been prepared in advance. Its inside was filled with large, jagged stones, its top made into a precarious mound. Anyone pushed in would hit the rocks and break their bones. When the prophet arrived and neared the well, he realized for sure that it was a trap, because there was no large crowd waiting, just scattered people watching from a distance. At that moment, one of the leaders gave the signal. His men surrounded the prophet from all sides. He did not resist. Dozens of them pounced on him. They tied his arms tightly with coarse rope, bound his legs together, and stuffed a thick cloth into his mouth so he could not scream. "You will not speak again," they mocked. Then they began dragging him on the ground, pulling him by his head and feet across the rough stone path. Sharp rocks cut his face, his clothes were torn, and his body was covered in blood, but his eyes still looked toward the sky, his heart silently praying. A small crowd had started to gather, watching in horrified shock. Some were crying. Others turned their faces away in shame. But no one had the courage to stop it. When they reached the well, they pulled the prophet to the top of the stone pile. Below, the pit was deep and filled with sharp, unforgiving rocks. "This is your final stop," shouted one of them. And they pushed him down. The messenger fell among the stones. When his body struck the rocks, a heartbreaking sound echoed through the silent square. He groaned, but not a single word of anger came from his mouth. In the narrow pit, he managed to move into a sitting position. He was wounded, but still alive, trapped between the stones, unable to move. It was dark, his hands and feet were tied, his mouth was sealed. He could only breathe through his nose. He could not speak. But he was not alone. The angels were recording his unwavering patience. The earth witnessed his agonizing pain. Every heartbeat carried his sacred mission to the throne of Allah. On the first day, the pain was intense, but he remained patient. On the second day, thirst began its cruel assault. His lips cracked, but he never stopped remembering Allah. On the third day, his wounds started to become infected. His fever rose, but still, he continued to pray. On the fourth day, hunger became unbearable. His stomach shrank, and his body trembled with weakness. On the fifth day, it became hard for him to breathe, but with his last ounce of strength, from the depths of his heart, he whispered, "My Lord, I have fulfilled my duty. I am ready to return to you. But do not leave this cruel, merciless people unpunished. They tortured your messenger. They denied you. Send your wrath upon them." And on the sixth day, he took his final breath as his soul left his body. A powerful ethereal light rose from between the stones, but the sky was silent, and far beyond the clouds, the angels of punishment were waiting for the command, because when a messenger is buried alive, the one who sent him does not stay silent for long. At that moment, the people had once again come out to worship their dead trees and lifeless idols. The drought had gotten worse. They were still begging for rain, the beginning of wrath. It all began with a wind. But this was not a gentle breeze that brought relief on a hot day. A deep, terrifying sound was heard in the distance. It was like thunder, but heavier, darker. Then, a black cloud appeared on the horizon, huge, thick, rushing forward with unnatural speed. The people began to celebrate. They thought their offerings had worked. They danced and shouted in joyous ecstasy before their idols and sacred trees. "Rain, finally, rain is coming," they cried. They had been thirsty for months. Their fields were dry and their animals had died. This rain, they believed, would save them. Men and women raised their hands in gratitude, but to idols, to trees. But then, animals broke through their fences, howling and crying in stark, primal terror, as if they could feel what the humans could not. Then the sky changed. Dark clouds rolled in from the horizon, heavy, thick, curling like monstrous dragons. Within minutes, they had completely blotted out the sun. But the people continued celebrating, even if some felt a deep, gnawing unease deep inside. They did not know that the messenger in the well had already taken his final breath. His soul had reached the heavens. And now, it was Allah's turn. Something shifted. The air suddenly grew hotter. The heat rose slowly at first, then became unbearable. Then, a thunderclap tore through the sky, so loud they had never heard anything like it. Birds fled in massive, panicked flocks. The ground shook. Panic spread like wildfire. Then, bolts of lightning began striking, one after another, the roaring blasts leaving people breathless with fear. But this was only the beginning. From deep beneath the earth, a terrifying rumble rose. At first, it was distant, then closer, louder, angrier. The ground began to tremble under their feet, lightly at first, then stronger and stronger still. But this was not a normal earthquake. This was the earth itself, furious over the innocent blood of the prophet that had been spilled upon it. Suddenly, with a terrifying crack, the land split open. Giant, gaping cracks appeared, swallowing homes, trees, everything in their path. The screams of the people were drowned in the dark, cavernous depths below. The earth opened and closed like a living, ravenous beast, pulling in those who tried to run. Some tried to crawl away, their bodies halfway into the abyss. But the earth took them too. Some hands reached out, clawing at the air in desperate, silent cries for help. But then they too disappeared forever into the deep. The most terrifying moment came when, along with the splitting ground, a fiery breath burst out, scorching and sulphurous, like the very flames of hell itself. Anyone who breathed it in was burned alive in an instant. There was nowhere left to run, nothing left to hide behind. The entire valley of Rass had become a giant, smoldering crater, and at the bottom of that pit, there was nothing but darkness and abject terror. The priests tried to take shelter under their sacred trees, but those trees were among the first to fall, and so were the priests. "Mercy," they cried. "Forgive us," but it was too late. They had killed the messenger. They had earned the wrath of Allah. And so, the people of Rass vanished from history and became a chilling warning for all who came after. Prophets are human, yes, but in the past, people killed them. They killed those who followed them too. Yet, Allah never forgets. He only waits for the right time. And when His wrath arrives, there is no one left to help. Allah mentions the people of Rass in the Quran alongside other destroyed nations, drawing our attention to their tragic and unforgettable end. Before them, the people of Nuh, the people of Rass, and many others denied the truth. Surat Al-Furqan, Ayah 38. According to the tafsir of Ibn Kathir, the people of Rass were one of the communities utterly destroyed by Allah, and at the top of their heinous crimes was the murder of the prophet sent to them. Many Islamic scholars also agree that the main reason for their destruction was the oppression of Allah's messenger and their stubborn refusal to repent. This is a lesson humanity must never forget. They forgot that every blessing came from Allah. They turned oppression into a way of life. And in the end, they made an unforgivable, fatal mistake. They killed their prophet. Allah's wrath may be delayed, but it is never forgotten. The destruction of the people of Rass is one of the most striking examples of a community being completely erased from the face of the earth. No great cities or monuments of theirs remain today. However, Islamic scholars, historians, and archaeologists have been working for years using Quranic verses, ancient texts, and archaeological evidence to identify where they may have once lived. Islamic historians and commentators like Ibn Kathir and Tabari suggest that the people of Rass lived somewhere in Arabia, possibly in Yemen or northern Arabia. They were known for their deep wells and are said to have lived around a large water source. Researchers looking for clues about this water-worshipping society have found dried out and collapsed wells in northern Arabia. Some of these wells are surrounded by the remains of burned and ruined structures. Near Petra and in old cities of Yemen, ruins believed to belong to people destroyed by great floods have been discovered. Some of these sites look like they were abandoned suddenly, and signs of massive water damage are still visible. Many of the regions where the Quran says destroyed nations once lived are now covered with desert and wastelands. The areas believed to have housed the people of Rass are similarly dry and abandoned today. Some Islamic sources suggest that Rass may have been located in Azerbaijan or near Mesopotamia due to the presence of ancient ruins and lost cities there. However, the most common view is that they lived in the northern part of Arabia, in the region between today's Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and Yemen. Their story offers one of the deepest and most meaningful lessons in human history, guided by the Quran and Hadiths. The mistakes that led to the destruction of the people of Rass have been held up as a stark warning for all generations. Seeing that this lesson still applies today shows that no matter how much humanity advances, we are still prone to making the same dangerous mistakes. The people of Rass considered water to be sacred. They saw it as the symbol of their power and wealth. They took pride in their water sources and treated their wells as sources of strength. But instead of seeing water as a part of nature, they treated it like a god that they could control with their own hands. This led them to misuse their resources and become arrogant toward nature. It stands as a powerful warning, even for the modern world, showing how ecological crises, mismanagement of water, and disrespect toward nature can lead to great destruction. Back then, they saw water as a blessing they owned, but they lived to see that same water rise against them and become a punishment. One of their greatest mistakes was to forget that all strength and wealth come from their Lord. The people of Ar-Rass rejected the warnings of their prophet, followed the path of pride and rebellion, and were finally destroyed. This story teaches us that human power and resources are temporary. True strength is found in submitting to Allah and being a humble servant to Him. History is a teacher for humanity. Every rise and fall of a civilization is a shared lesson for all people. These lessons are not just warnings for the people of the past. They speak directly to us today. Destruction is not only something from ancient times, it is one of the great dangers humanity still faces. People today are drunk with power, wealth, and worldly pleasures. But we must place our trust only in Allah. He is the one who gave us all these blessings, as well as the hands, feet, eyes, and ears, the tongue, and the entire body we use to benefit from them. In every era of human history, true power has come through surrendering to Allah. We must take the warnings that Allah gave in the Quran about past nations seriously. They are not told just for historical knowledge. They are lessons meant to shape how we live today. Salvation is only possible by turning to Allah. We hope this story has brought light not only to the darkness of the past, but also to the struggles of our present time. Let us end this video with the Prophet's words at the well, La ilaha illallah. There is no God but Allah. Only He provides sustenance. Do not turn to the water that falls. Turn to the power of the One who sends it.